The Democratic challenger to the White House, former Vice President Joe Biden, yesterday defeated President Donald Trump to emerge President-elect of the United States of America, effectively positioning himself to lead a nation gripped by a pandemic and a confluence of economic and social turmoil. His victory came after 4 days of nail-biting uncertainty, as election officials in battleground states sieved through and counted an unprecedented surge of early mail-in and in-person ballots that delayed the processing of millions of votes. Eventually, however, Biden crossed the 270 Electoral College mark with wins in Pennsylvania and Nevada, leading to widespread celebrations in America and palpable relief around the world. Biden, who will be 78 by the time he takes office on January 20 next year, staked his candidacy less on any distinctive political ideology than on galvanizing a broad coalition of voters around the notion that Trump posed an existential threat to America's democracy. The strategy proved effective, resulting in pivotal victories in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, one-time Democratic bastions that had been flipped by Donald Trump in 2016. With his grip on the United States presidency assured, Biden, in his victory speech last night, focused on reuniting a divided America by reaching out to over 70 million people who voted for Trump. He went on to call for the return of bipartisanship and dismissed the notion that America is divided along the lines of blue states and red states, stressing that it is made up of the United States. Well, the president-elect certainly has his work cut out for him, not just in healing the divisions, but also by tackling the COVID-19 pandemic that has ravaged America, fixing the economy, and also restoring the United States as a global leader in the Committee of Nations. Now here to discuss Biden's victory and what this portends for the United States domestic and foreign policies is a former Minister of Foreign Affairs in Nigeria, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, thank you for joining us on ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show. Hello, Prof. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abati. It is a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Prof. Well, very quickly, what has happened in the United States in the last few days? What does it portend for American civilization and also for global civilization, in your view? And why should we be concerned about developments in the United States, which has, for days now, captured the imagination of the world?
Well, I'm going to be a two-handed analyst, like the two-handed economist, because I don't want to rain on anybody's parade. Let me start with the positive narratives. At the tail end of your introduction, you said the implication for world civilization about what has happened in the United States. When CNN declared the election results and declared John Biden president-elect, my 7-year-old grandson called me on the phone and said, "Yay, we won." And I said to him, "Okay, we won." Because he is too young to understand why I took a back step when he said, "Yeah, we won." Because he's not an American. He does not live in the United States. So, who are the we who won? And yet a 7-year-old could identify with what has just happened in the United States. So that's an illustration of how much the world was on tenterhooks about this election. Now, as I said, the positive narratives first. I congratulate President-elect Joe Biden. You know, there are times we use cliches and we then dismiss them as cliches. Well, Joe Biden is one cliche that we cannot dismiss out of hand. He had run for the presidency twice before, and now the third time he's won. So this confirms, as I said, the cliche that if life is not about falling down. No, it's about each time you fall down, you get up again. And it doesn't matter how many times life knocks you down. Life has dealt Joe Biden, well, some rather bad hands. But finally, at his old age, he has achieved the pinnacle of his political ambition. So congratulations to him. Congratulations to the vice president-elect, who people who studied at Oxford or Cambridge will understand what I mean when I talk about she's been successful, triples, 3 honors. First woman vice president, first black woman vice president, first Asian woman vice president. So 3 firsts for her. Congratulations to her. Congratulations to the United States that the system somehow worked and America is back on the world stage to almost universal applause. So congratulations to the United States, and congratulations to the world that for the next 4 years, they wouldn't have to deal with a disruptive, foul mouth, somebody who doesn't believe in protocol, somebody who doesn't believe in multilateralism. They will be dealing with a president who is committed to helping solve the problems of the world rather than adding to those problems. So congratulations all around there.
Well,
on the other hand, yes, Dr. Abati.
Yes, Prof, please
are
go
you
ahead.
talking
please
to
go
me?
ahead. Please go ahead,
Okay.
Prof. You were going to
On
say
the other
something.
hand,
Yes.
Yes, on the other hand, I am not in an overwhelming celebrative mood. Rather, I am in a lamentation mood. I feel unhappy about what has just happened in the United States. While we celebrate and clap for the 75 million voters, 70 million, we are rounding up the figures now, 70 million Americans voted for a racist, a man who celebrated Nazi symbols and Nazi movements, a man who was disrespectful of women, a man who had no regard for the truth, a man who has just sacrificed 225,000 Americans to the COVID-19 epidemic simply because he refused to level with Americans. Not that he didn't know how treacherous this COVID-19 was going to be. It's on tape with Bob Woodward that as far back as February, he recognized how dangerous it was to Americans. But he refused to level with Americans. 70 million Americans still voted for him. This alarms me because we're not talking about 5 million or 10 million voters. About 47% of the voters voted for this man, Dr. Abati. Adolf Hitler won only about 30% of the German votes in the last free elections held in Germany. And we know the consequences of Hitler's victory in Germany. Apart from the Second World War, till today, German symbols have been adopted by right-wing populist movements all over Europe and the United States. Soldiers, American soldiers, their bravery in combating Nazism is evident in the cemeteries all over Europe. And yet, 70 million Americans voted for someone who will not even celebrate the bravery and the sacrifice of these American soldiers. Now, you may ask, why am I speaking with so much passion? What does this really matter to me personally? I'll tell you why. I'm about the same age with President-elect Joe Biden. In fact, I am about a year older than he is. The first American president and the first world statesman that I met in my life was John F. Kennedy in 1962. I was only 20 years old. I met him in the White House. And since then, I had embraced American civilization. I had tried to pilot my own political values and my own political career after the trajectory of the United States. And it's been okay. I had met Carter, President Carter. I had met President Clinton. I had met President Bush, the junior, the son. So it's been all right. There have been a few here and there, like President Clinton. Like President Nixon. But by and large, it has been, to me, it had been a satisfying case of identity. And then to now have this happen, People may still be celebrating the light on the hill with the election of Joe Biden. I am sorry. As I say, I don't want to rain on anybody's parade, but I see a gradual decline of American civilization. If 70 million Americans can vote for this man, he has planted, President Trump has planted evil seeds in American political system that for the next 50 years is going to be not only with the United States, but with the world. You know, the Roman Empire did not just collapse overnight. The Roman Empire of Julius Caesar, of Augustus Caesar, became the Roman Empire of Nero. And gradually the decline set in.
Well, Prof,
honestly, this is what this reminds me.
Well, Prof, I get your point about the decline of the American civilization. But what do we replace it with? The Chinese civilization? But before you answer that question, let's quickly take Vice President Joe Biden's statement yesterday and listen to that, and then we'll come back and analyze this development in the United States further. Stay with us.
The Bible tells us, to everything there is a season, a time to build, a time to reap, and a time to sow, and a time to heal. This is the time to heal in America. Now this campaign is over. What is the will of the people? What is our mandate? I believe it's this. Americans have called upon us to marshal the forces of decency, the forces of fairness, to marshal the forces of science and the forces of hope in the great battles of our time. The battle to control the virus, the battle to build prosperity, the battle to secure your family's health care, the battle to achieve racial justice and root out systemic racism in this country. And the battle to save our planet by getting climate under control. The battle to restore decency, defend democracy, and give everybody in this country a fair shot. That's all they're asking for, a fair shot.
Well, you're still watching ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show, and our guest is Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, former Minister of External Affairs of Nigeria and Professor of Politics and International Relations. Prof, thank you for staying with us. You were raising questions about the decline of the American civilization, and I'd asked you, what replaces it? Chinese civilization? But we just listened to President-elect of the United States, Joe Biden. And I would like to ask you, what do you think swung it for Joe Biden? What really is special here, considering the fact, as you pointed out earlier, that even incumbent President Donald Trump got as much as 70 million votes, as it were?
Well, to answer your first question, as regards what's the alternative to the American civilization? Yes, you are quite right. You have identified it, that the upcoming civilization is the Chinese civilization. Now, this poses identity problems for the whole world, including Africa. Now, what's the identity crisis? If you, Dr. Abati, or if I land in New York today, once I clear immigration and I put my passport in my pocket to Everybody I meet on the street, I may be an American. You may be an American. You look like one. Even if you speak and your accent sounds funny, well, there are millions of Americans, whose accent sounds funny. So no American is going to turn around to say, Dr. Abati sounds funny.
They will probably
Not
think I'm
like
from Haiti.
when we went there.
Or Jamaica.
I mean, when my generation went there in the 1960s, they thought we talked funny because we didn't talk like the African Americans. And they were not used to British trained, Africans talking. But if we went to Peking today, the moment we step off the plane, the average Chinese will know that Dr. Abati or Professor Akinyemi is not a Chinese. Even if we speak Mandarin Chinese perfectly. So that's what I meant by an identity crisis. You have an upcoming civilization that is rather exclusively defined, while the American civilization was inclusively defined. And that is the identity crisis it poses for the generation coming after my own generation. Now, I listened. I stayed up until 3 a.m. this morning just to listen to President-elect Biden's victory speech, part of which you have just played to our listeners. The relevance of his speech has to do with a peculiarity of the American political system. There is a narrative which I subscribe to. It's not original to me, but I subscribe to it, which says that at each juncture of American history, whenever the liberals become victorious, the right wing claw back this victory by asking for compromises, and that invariably the grand compromise arrived at is to the detriment of the liberal side of American civilization. And let me give you a few illustrations. When the Americans fought the British and got their independence, in spite of the grand floral declaration in the documents dealing with independence, the right wing made sure that votes were denied to women, votes were denied to blacks, votes were denied to original Americans, votes were denied to even whites who did not own property. That was the grand compromise. Secondly, after the Civil War, won with the massive contribution in blood and tears of the African Americans, the compromise reached was to deny civil rights to the Black Americans. This was the compromise reached after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. So in a way, you could see what I mean by that narrative. Now already, there are now pressures. If you listen on American networks, there are now pressures being mounted on Biden in order to claw back the victory. Oh, don't listen to the radical Democrats. You didn't owe the victory to them. Don't listen to this, don't listen to that. You must be prepared to, have a compromise with Republicans and what have you. So I was quite happy to hear Biden say a few things. The first thing he said was, he said he recognized the contribution of the black votes to his victory. Don't forget that by Iowa primaries, he was finished. He was finished. Biden was finished. He didn't even register on the scale. It was when he got to South Carolina with the massive black votes there that his political career was resurrected. And yet for the governor of Ohio to be saying to him, don't listen to people who are, asking you to concentrate on black rights. He said the blacks had always looked after his back. And so I was happy to hear him say that. I was happy to hear him say to the Americans that he owed his victory to a rainbow of American electorates, including Native Americans, African Americans, liberal Democrats, Abraham Lincoln Republicans, women, all a rainbow. I hope he will not go into a deal with the Republicans to the detriment of the political interests of this rainbow of Americans.
Well, Prof, if I may comment here, we're Africans. I know that, across the world, India, Jamaica, everywhere, there's been a lot of excitement about the emergence of Vice President Joe Biden as president-elect, as 46th president of the United States. But what does a Joe Biden presidency, what does it mean for Africa? What is it likely to mean for Africa? Why should we be excited in Africa? And what will be the implications for global relations, particularly at the level of multilateralism?
Well, I believe that a Biden presidency is going to be more sensitive to the struggle for human rights and the struggle for democracy and for decency in governance. His presidency is not going to encourage, either by emulation or by foreign aid or military aid, the comfort of dictators and autocrats that you have in the world. That, to me, is probably right now what I can identify, specifically dealing with Africa. Of course, African interests have always been part of interests promoted by multilateralism. And the fact that the Biden presidency will go back to the World Health Organization, will go back to the Paris Treaty, the Paris Agreement on environmentalism, respect for climatic changes, the need to protect climatic developments in the world. I believe, in fact, because it was part of it, that the Biden presidency is going to seek to bring Iran back into that grand agreement that they were able to sign with Iran in order to moderate the development of nuclear weapons in Iran. Will be a very good development, a very good contribution, in the sense that it will lessen the tension in that part of the world. I expect that the Biden administration will show some respect for Palestinian rights. I don't expect that Biden will pull the embassy back from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. That kind of a yo-yo is not likely to happen. I don't expect it. I may be wrong, but I think that short of bringing back that embassy from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv, there will be another new American Middle East plan that will seek to draw the Palestinians back into the negotiating table with the Israelis. Biden is going to have a very difficult relationship with the Israelis. Every liberal American president always has a difficult relationship with the Israelis. So I don't expect him to have an easy ride in his relationship with Netanyahu. In terms of aid to Africa, the AGOA, which was put in place by President Bush, the son, to encourage value-added products from Africa and allow them entry into the United States. It was going to, its tenure was going to run out. And President Trump has said he wasn't going to renew it. Biden is not going to allow it to run out. But don't let us forget, however, that the American economy is in very dire straits now. So I don't expect to see a massive foreign aid package targeting Africa specifically. We have problems now. We have problems now in Ethiopia, Mali, Guinea, Tanzania, all dealing with Côte d'Ivoire, thank you, all dealing with the consequences of electoral malpractices. I foresee a Biden administration either directly or through surrogates, the AU, ECOWAS, and so on, being more involved in resolving those issues than Trump was.
Well, Prof, we're going to wrap this up in about 10 minutes, but I would like to ask you about this. One of the things that President-elect Joe Biden pointed out was how America is a land of possibilities. And that was also echoed by Vice President-elect Kamala Harris when she said, well, she won't be the last woman to be Vice President of the United States, that every girl watching her could see that the United States is truly a land of possibilities. But what do you think? is the symbolism of Kamala Harris emerging as first black woman to be vice president, first woman to be vice president, first Asian American to be vice president. How important is it beyond the symbolism of racism and gender?
Well, first of all, it's only in the United States that you could have what I will call the Harris phenomenon. Nobody can really define a unique identity for her. Yes, the blacks can claim her. Then the Asians claim her. Then, of course, the women claim her. It's only the United States, really, where it can happen. And of course, we shouldn't forget anywhere in the world that emphasizes merit, Kamala Harris will be an embodiment of that merit. If you look at her trajectory, Attorney General, Senator, etc., etc. Now, America reinvents itself. There's something that Winston Churchill said, that the United States invariably does the best thing, haven't tried all other possibilities. And I expect that Kamala Harris will be the first American female president on merit, given her talents, given what we have seen in terms of her trajectory from California now to the Navy House. The Navy House is what they call the residence of the American vice president. It's not just to young girls in the United States. I think to young girls all over the world, it will be an inspiration that things are possible, positive things are possible. And so when they face discrimination, when they face negativism in their own culture or in the exposure to the rest of the world, they have the example of Vice President-elect Harris to, at least in that sense, that light on the hill is still shining, is still beckoning. I expect that President Biden is going to open up America again in terms of a flexible and more inclusive immigration policy. So more people from the rest of the world attracted by the American dream are again going to flock to the United States. Yes, they will not be able to become president unless you are born in the United States. But like her parents, the new influx may be parents of a future senator, a future cabinet member, or a future president, or a future vice president.
Well,
it's a good day. It's a good day for women, a good day for young girls, a good day for blacks, a good day for Asians.
Well, Prof.
In spite of what I have said about the decline in the civilization, it is still a good day for the world.
Well, Prof, I asked you earlier about the implications of a Biden presidency for multilateralism. But I'd like to ask you about something that is of immediate interest to us, the race for the Director Generalship of the World Trade Organization. many Nigerians had said, oh, with the Biden presidency, we'll be in a much better place. Do you share that view? And that we would likely see a Biden presidency who will not be, as antagonistic as President Trump has been with regard to the WTO and the WHO, and even, if you like, the AFDB.
Well, the WHO, as I said earlier, the Biden will go back into the World Health Organization. The WTO is a bit more problematical. Now, you see, the WTO has now become a vicarious struggle between the Americans and the Chinese. While I don't expect Biden to employ the crudity of language of Trump, he's going to be civil. I mean, he was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate for a long time. So you can expect civility in his attitude towards the rest of the world, including the Chinese. He's got to be careful that he's not painted as bending over backwards to please the Chinese. Now, the Chinese have, in the conflict over the candidature struggle in WTO, have pitched their tent with Okonjo-Iweala, and the Americans have pitched their tent with the South Korean delegate. Now, South Korea is a more intimate ally of the United States all across board than Nigeria is. I'm quite aware that Ngozi took on American citizenship, but she was still sponsored not by America, but by Nigeria. So it is possible that even within the Biden administration, she will still be seen more as a Nigerian than as an American. So the long and short of my answer to your question is, I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, but Prof, quickly, before we go, and we have a very limited time before I come to the panel that is here in the studio with me. President Trump has been saying this election is not over yet. He says he will go to court. He says he will contest the election. But we also have reactions, reports indicating that people around him are saying, look, President Trump, enough is enough. Let's go home. Let's pack our load and move. What do you think is likely to happen?
Well, first of all, President Trump is doing a disservice to democracy, whether in the United States or in the rest of the world. This is going to be an encouragement. His behavior is going to be an encouragement to dictators and autocrats and enemies of democracy all over the world who don't like to play by the rules. But he has served notice to the whole world that this is what he was going to do. It still doesn't make it any more pleasant or any more acceptable to us. How will it all end? I think that the institution, at the end of the day, the institution will rise up to its responsibilities. I believe that is in for disappointment at the Supreme Court, which is expecting to bail him out I think he's in for a disappointment. I think faced with his historical role and the legacy, majority of members of the Supreme Court will endorse this election. But it's not going to be a pleasant exercise.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, for joining us on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show. Thank you very much indeed for your thoughts